Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of In the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Thank you, Jesus. It is a beautiful day to be in the kitchen. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the last recipe of all, which happens to be one of my favorites and a favorite of my home state of Georgia, which is a classic pecan pie. So yes, that is the final episode coming up. So I hope you will like and subscribe so you can see all the other episodes, and be sure to go back because I have videos where I show you how to make apple pie, lemon meringue pie, sweet potato pie, pumpkin pie, all of those pies, and I include the recipes as well. So don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss out on any time I do any other special baking episodes. So let's jump into the video. Now here I have a pie crust that I made, which is my all butter pie crust. I will link to that in the iCards. And I've got it par baked. Now most pecan pie recipes, you typically don't pre-bake the crust, but I am a fan of pre-baking because that way it ensures that your pie crust is never gummy and doughy at the bottom, which we don't want. So always blind bake. So I have my crust blind baked and ready to go, and I'm going to set that aside. And then I'm going to reach for a sheet tray because I'm going to roast my pecans. Now here I have whole pecans. I'm going to spread those out on a baking sheet. And I'm also going to roast up some walnuts. So I'm going to set those here because I'm making a maple pecan pie. Now, let me say something about the word pecan versus pecan. Where I come from, which is Eastern Atlanta, we say pecan. If you go in more southern areas of Georgia or up north, people say pecan. So different regions of Georgia says it differently. Up here where we live in Southern Virginia, people say pecan. So however you say it, in our house, we typically say pecan. But I have learned, depending on whose company I'm in, to expect to hear, what? But in our house, we say pecan, so that is how I pronounce it. But if you pronounce it pecan, that's perfectly okay. We all know what we mean. Now I'm going to roast my pecans and my walnuts in a 350-degree oven for 10 minutes until they're nice and toasty. Now I'm roasting them whole, but I'm going to take some of them and I'm going to blitz them in the food processor because I like that texture of, if you have all whole nuts, your pie is difficult to chew. And if you have all blitzed up nuts, it doesn't really look as good. So I'm going to reserve a few whole pecans for the top. The rest of them I'm going to blitz. So let's go ahead and roast the nuts in the oven. So while the nuts are roasting, I'm going to go ahead and prepare my filling. And I'm using my scale because trying to measure corn syrup and then pour it into a container is a complete headache when you can measure it all into one bowl. So I've got my scale on. And I'm going to use pure maple syrup because this is a maple pecan pie. So I'm going to use some maple syrup, and I also will use some brown sugar as well. So I need 75 grams of maple syrup. But before I add my maple syrup, I'm going to add in my butter. And I have here melted butter. This is unsalted melted butter. Go ahead and add that in. The butter just helps to prevent it from all just sinking and sitting, all the sugar just sitting at the bottom of the of your bowl. And then I go ahead and clear that out. And now I need 75 grams of pure maple syrup. Maple syrup smells so good. It also has a slightly smoky, sweet flavor too. I really like it in a pecan pie. I always add it. Mama never did, but I did make pecan pies for her, and I did put maple syrup in it, and she did like it. So also I am going to pour right in my light corn syrup. Mama used dark corn syrup. Since I'm using maple syrup and I'm also using brown sugar, I didn't feel the need to use dark corn syrup. And you can use a mixture of light and dark corn syrup. So I know I need 290 grams of corn syrup. So instead of measuring it into a bowl and then pouring it in, I can just measure right over my mixing bowl. All right. And I do want to add in a pinch of salt, a fat pinch of salt. Not too much, you don't want it to be salty. And I'm going to go ahead and add in my brown sugar. Add that in. Give it a little whisk. Okay, whisk that up. And I think at this point we are done with the scale, so I can set the scale aside because it's done its job. And you can see it's all in one, so there's no need to, you know, I don't need anything else. There's no little bowls. I mean, okay, so I do have some little bowls, but that's just for measuring ease. But other than that, I don't have all these little measuring bowls that I use, especially when you're working with honey and maple syrup. By the way, you can measure your butter into a bowl. So pour your butter in, pour that out, and then measure your corn syrup and your maple syrup, and it will glide out because you buttered the bowl with butter, if you want to do it that way. Okay, so get this nicely mixed. And then we'll add in our vanilla extract. Okay, so I don't typically measure, but about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. That's good. And you always notice I smell things because I have many different spices and extracts and things in my pantry. So especially when I'm really, really busy and I have a lot of baking to do, I'm just grabbing things. And I always run it past my nose because my hands can always grab the wrong thing. Now I am going to add, just to increase the buttery flavor, I'm going to add butter extract. Now butter extract is not artificial. This is a natural extract that is, it does contain butter. So if you can find it, this is made by McCormick. If you can find it, use it. I'm going to use about 1/4 teaspoon. It just enhances the butter flavor. But as I say, this is not an artificial flavoring. We don't want artificial flavors. This is real butter extract. So go ahead and add that in, and then just whisk it in. Okay. This looks almost like a whipped caramel or something. Now, you know me, I am very fond of encouraging you to sample things before you add eggs, or put it in the oven if you can, because once, of course, you put everything in here and it's all one and done, you don't have that option to go back again and find out, do I like the sweetness level of my pie? So before I add the eggs, I have here a pecan, just one pecan, and I'm going to just dip it in here. This sounds crazy, but it makes sense. Thank you, Jesus. Now I'm going to taste my filling. I'm happy. If I'm happy with the sweetness level, tasting it that way, I'll be happy with the finished pie. Okay, so my nuts are out of the oven and they're nicely toasted. You can tell when they're nicely toasted because they'll change color. So I'm just going to let these cool, set these aside and let those cool. It's important to toast the nuts because toasting them brings out all the flavor. If you just have raw pecans going into a pie, it can have a little bit of an unpleasant taste. It's not very nice. So just go ahead and toast your nuts. And I'm going to go ahead and add my eggs at this point. Safe to go ahead and add the eggs because we don't need to taste anything else. So go ahead and add in my eggs. I'm using 3 large eggs. Or the messy eggs too. Okay, and I'm just gonna whisk these up. I'm gonna whisk them up now because sometimes it can be a little difficult to fully whisk eggs once they hit. Well, that one's excited to get in here. It can be a little tricky sometimes to give them a proper full whisking once they're into a thick mixture like this with the butter and the sugar and the corn syrup. So giving them a head start in the whisking helps. And then just go ahead and add them in and then whisk this together. Okay, just whisk it till it's smooth. Okay, that's all nicely mixed in and we don't need to whisk anymore. At this point, the filling is done. Okay, so let's set the filling aside and let's get back to work on the pecans. So I have my toasted nuts here, and I'm just picking out a few walnuts and a few pecans because, like I said, you want some whole nuts so you get the pretty nut, and it gives you a nice texture. Now, the remainder of these, I am going to just roughly chop. You can do this in a food processor, but because they have been toasted, it really, they chop very easy. As a matter of fact, you can do them with your hand if you don't want to use a knife or something, because they chop very easily. So I'm just going to give these a rough chop. They smell so good. Don't skip toasting your pecans for a pecan pie. I remember one time I actually made a mistake and burned them. I was busy and I was making a bunch of little pies, and I left them too long and I burned them, and I didn't have any more pecans. So I just went ahead and put them in there anyway. And I'm like, you know, I'm sorry, it'll be fine. Mama said, it'll be fine. She said, it'll just taste more like pecan. And I baked those little pies, and I have to tell you, those were the pecan flavor just sang. So obviously I'm not encouraging you to burn your pecans, but make sure that you do roast them. Okay, so I've got my chopped pecans here. Now, for a special ingredient, I am going to add 1/4 cup of black walnuts. Now, this is really going to make this pecan pie sing. Black walnuts are very strong, so you don't want to add too many of them. But we get our walnuts from our local fire department. They have, they sell nuts every year, so that's where we get them from. So I'm just going to add in with these nuts, I'm going to add in 1/4 cup of black walnuts. If you don't have access to black walnuts, you can just use regular walnuts, more regular walnuts. That black walnut smell. Oh, wow. The moment it hits those other nuts and they're warm too, this is going to be so good. Okay. So now I've got my nuts nicely chopped and ready to go. I have my filling ready made. I have my crust ready to go. So all I need to do is pour everything into my pie crust. Now my oven is still at 350 degrees. So I roasted the nuts at 350 degrees. The oven is still at 350 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and pour in my nuts. Now some recipes tell you to pour the filling in, then pour the nuts in. I have never liked that method, and I've tried it before and I didn't like it. It just didn't, it was strange. So I'm going to pour in my nuts, and then I'm going to pour in my filling. So let's go ahead and pour in the filling. I like to give it a little stir because sometimes some of the sugar has settled at the bottom. Let's just give it a little stir. There we are. And then pour it right in. And just pour, just like that. There we are. Very nice. This smells real good. Okay, get all that good filling in there. And then just top the remaining nuts. Sprinkle the remaining nuts on top. Okay, all the nuts are in. So now I'm going to bake this in a 300 and 350 oven for about 40 to 45 minutes. Start checking it a little early. You'll know when it's done when the edges are set, but the center is just a little bit jiggly. The pecan pie is done. Those black walnuts smell so good. Oh, wow. And how do you know when a pecan pie is done? All you do is just, you see the little jiggle? It's just a little jiggle in the center. It smells good. Oh, wow. Now this needs to cool completely, of course, before you can slice into it. And I'm actually going to be giving this pie to somebody, so I won't be slicing into it at all. But I'm sure they will enjoy it. And I hope you have enjoyed this pie series that I've done. I've enjoyed bringing you all of the recipes, and I hope that you find the recipes useful and they help you in making good food for yourself, from your family, from scratch. And as the good Lord bring the ideas and the gifts and the recipes to me, I like to share them with you guys as well. If you've enjoyed them, please leave a comment and let me know. And also, be sure to tell me how your baked goods turned out. I would love to hear from all of you. So I hope you've enjoyed everything, and the good Lord willing, I will see you guys again in another episode. Take care, y'all. Bye.